Hello Year 6, Wednesday the 3rd, just as it was when we did Big Read, in fact. Strange that, isn't it? Today's English session. So let's start with the starter. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to tick which of those sentences starts with a subordinate clause, please. Pause the video, write them out, tick the one that's the subordinate clause, or just write out the one that you think is the subordinate clause. When you've done that, play the video again, and I'll talk through with you which one is the correct answer. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so the correct answer is number 2, even though it was difficult. That is a subordinate clause. We know it is because on its own it makes no sense. It is then connected to a main clause, she was determined to succeed, which does make sense if said just on its own. Connected with a comma because it is subordinate and main, rather than needing a semicolon for a main clause and a main. So that is the first part. Second part, please. I'd like you to write down what the contractions would be for those 3 words. Remember, contractions are when we can use contraction for possession or omission. In this case, it's for omission. We are omitting a letter. That means taking a letter out to be replaced with that little apostrophe. So have a go at doing that with those 3, please. You're finding the contraction of it is, the sun is, and might not. Pause the video, get those written in or written down, play the video when you're done, and I'll go over the correct answers. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so the right answers are it is becomes its. We lose the I of is and replace it with the apostrophe for its. The sun is becomes suns. We lose the I of is again and replace it with an apostrophe. That's why it's called omission. And might not becomes mightn't. It mightn't be this sunny later. We lose the O of not and replace it with an apostrophe. That one's a tricky one, that last one. Mightn't is not a contraction we say very often these days. It's quite archaic, quite old-fashioned, that word. Hopefully, though, you will have worked it out, and hopefully you'll have got that apostrophe in the right place. Remember, this would have been on a spelling, punctuation, and grammar paper, which means if you spelt any of them wrong or didn't put the apostrophe in the right place, you wouldn't have got the mark. So you must be accurate, you must be precise. Recap on yesterday's lesson then. I'm just going to move myself to the middle slightly because I know this thing's going to come up. So we looked at direct speech yesterday, and in that direct speech we were looking at Eliot and Thanatos having a conversation. We have Eliot here saying, "You can't do this, you have to let Virgo go. You promised that you would." And Thanatos, being the antagonist, saying, "I don't have to do anything. I promised, but I never swore on the sticks." And we turned that into direct speech. We did that by taking them out of the speech bubbles and putting them into sentences, using all of the rules of direct speech. So, inverted commas to open the speech. "You can't do this," comma, close the inverted commas, because Eliot hasn't finished speaking. Eliot groaned in protest. That's an adverbial, so it needs a comma after it. Telling me how Eliot did something is an adverbial. "You have to let Virgo go!" Exclamation mark inside the speech because it's something that he's exclaiming. "You promised that you would," and then a full stop inside the speech because Eliot has finished speaking. Then we close our speech. Always close your speech, never let it just hang open. We then go to Thanatos, so we need a new line because there's a new speaker. Open the speech. "I don't have to do anything," comma, because Thanatos has not finished speaking. But we close the speech because he's stopping for now, and the narrator needs to come in to tell us how he said it. Thanatos argued, comma, because it's an adverbial. "Smirking at the helpless mortal," comma, because it's another adverbial, and then we're going back into the speech. So we always have a comma before the speech unless it is starting the line. "I promised, but I never swore on the sticks." Full stop inside the speech. Close your speech with the inverted commas. We have now finished. We've written up that bit of dialogue. It was as simple as that, and you all did really well. So hopefully that recap put it fresh in your head again. Important to keep it there, because when we do our hot write next week, I will be expecting to see some speech in your hot write. But that was yesterday. What about today? Today then, we are looking at describing setting in our writing. And we're going to be thinking about the 5 different senses, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we're also going to be using expanded noun phrases and relative clauses. If you're unsure what either of those two things are, pause the video now and read over those definitions, because that way you'll be ready for when we move on to the main lesson. Most of you, though, I don't think will need to. Most of you will remember those from having done them several times. Relative clauses we did quite recently, in fact. So, pause the video if you need to. And everybody else, let's move on to the next slide. So, we have a cave here. Funny that, because that's where we're setting our story. So that is the description, the setting description that we're going to be working on today. And we've already said, when we're doing a setting description, we need to think of the 5 senses. So quickly turn to your partner if you're in school, or if you're at home, say out loud what the 5 senses are. See if you can name all of them. To help you a little bit, I'm going to put up some clues. So, what is the first of the 5 senses? Second? Third? Fourth? And what is the 5th sense? Hopefully you said sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. The second to last and the last clue, hard there, really. Hopefully you got taste. I couldn't find a good one for touch, so there's me being gently touched in the face by a rake. Unusual. Anyway, so the reason we use those 5 senses is so that we can get what we picture in our head clearly described to the person who's reading, so they can picture it in their head. We want them to see, through the magic of writing and the power of description, exactly what we've got pictured in our head. So let's have a go at that. The first thing I'd like you to do, I'd like you to have a go, please, at describing what you can see in this picture. Do it in 2 or 3 sentences and try and include in those sentences an expanded noun phrase and a relative clause. That way, you're already doing things from the Wolf. Doesn't need to be long though, because you're going to be putting all this together at the end to write a full paragraph. But for now, we're just doing a few practices. So pause the video, have a go at writing just a sentence, 2, maximum of 3 sentences to describe what you can see, and only what you can see, just the 1 sentence for now, in that picture. I'll then show you a model that I've done and let you have a read over it. Speak to you again in a moment then. Okay, so there's my model on the screen. Just like I did yesterday, I'm not going to read out to you everything that comes up on the screen. I'm going to let you do that yourself. But what I will say is the bits that I've put in orange, they are where I have actually hit the Wolf. So the first bit there, radiant white light, adjective, comma, adjective, noun. That is me putting 2 adjectives with a noun, which makes it an expanded noun phrase. I've then got a relative clause, starting with the relative pronoun which, and put in with 2 commas. It should actually have stayed orange right the way up till emerald, moss, comma, but for some reason I managed to miss that. Have a read over though, steal some of that vocabulary. They're yours now, lock them in. That's why we do model rights, so that you can take some good ideas. That's fine, that's what we do. That's what learning is. It's taking existing knowledge and making it our own. How did yours compare to that? Maybe share them with someone in school if you're in school. How do they compare? Did you get everything in? Was yours as good? How could you make it better? Whilst you're talking about that though, let's have a look at the next one. I want you to do the same again really. Describe what you can hear this time in that cave. Pause the video, 2 sentences, won't need more than that. Trying to use relative clauses and expanded noun phrases. Have a go at writing them down. I'll then show you my modelled right. Speak to you again in a second. Okay, so there's my modelled right. See if you can find where the expanded noun phrase and the relative clause are. I mean, they're orange, so you should be able to find it. Which way round are they though? When you've had a read over that, you can start the video up again, and I'll talk to you today about our main task and the thing I'd like you to complete and send in to me. Speak to you again in a second. Okay, your tasks for today then. I'd like you please to, if you're doing green, I'd like you to write a paragraph about that picture or about your cave that describes what you can see and what you can hear. So the sights and sounds within your cave. If you're doing orange, I'd like you to do the sights and the sounds within your cave, but also the smells as well. And I'd like you to make sure, Orange, that you include those expanded noun phrases and the relative pronouns. Green, you should be trying to get the expanded noun phrases in at the very least. Brilliant if you can get a relative clause in too. That would be fantastic. Red, though, I'd like you to describe all 5 senses within that cave. The only one I might let you off is taste, although you do get like a metallic, almost salty taste in your mouth if you're quite deep in a cave, because you've got all the minerals around you and they create a different quality to the air. So maybe you could describe it that way, but I don't want Elliot or Virgo just licking rocks. That's just weird. We're not going down that route. We're not making them crazy. But an added challenge for Red, I'd like you to try and also weave in some of those Alan Peat sentences that we looked at last week. They're your challenges then. Your paragraph should probably be about half a page of A4. I know some of you are starting to get to the end of your books. Try and make do as best you can, but if you do really need a new book, just message me or message Miss Barrett on Dojo and we'll try and sort out for you to be able to go and pick one up from school. But there will be new ones going out after half term for your next sort of set of work. Right then, that is your activity for today. Do the very best you can. I look forward to reading them. Remember, the better you do, the more likely you can just use this, take it direct and plonk it straight in to your hot write for next week. If you do a really good setting description to open up your story, well, then it's done, isn't it? You've got your first paragraph sorted, no thought needed. Look forward to reading them though. I'll speak to you tomorrow with your English and your big read. But that's everything from me for today. So goodbye.